right? Welcome to Digital Asset News. Take the top stories in crypto and break them down into bite-sized pieces. Today, just as the thumbnail and the title suggests, it's a pretty bad day. I cannot say it any way, shape, or form. So Russia has invaded Ukraine, and we're going to take a look at what that does to the market and what's going to happen a little bit down the road. Now, I have no crystal ball, but there is things that we can do right now to insulate. So first up, we'll talk about Russia, how it invades Ukraine, what we know actually right now. We'll also take a look at Twitter results and what people are saying on Twitter and where things are potentially going. And lastly, I want to talk to you about, this is going to be a pretty short video, focusing on the things that you can change. Because I'll be honest with you right now, there's so much turmoil and there's so much ambiguity and there's so much nervousness and there's so many people who are just losing it. It really just comes down to look at your sphere of control and what can you change and work on changing those things that you can and have the wisdom and power to know the difference between the two. And lastly, we'll just do a quick Q&A, 5 minutes, 5 questions, and go from there. All right, so we'll go on all those things. First, take a look at what happened with the markets in our markets. Also take a look at gold. If you're watching the live stream, first of all, welcome. Thanks for coming by. This is a pretty awful day. Thoughts and prayers and sentiment go out to the people of Ukraine, because right now this is a war that I'll be honest with you. A lot of people, a lot of talking heads, a lot have said that could happen, could not happen, but no one really knew the future. No one has a crystal ball. So these things that people talk about, maybe they knew it, maybe they didn't, but this is exactly where we're at. And of course, we can always take a look at hindsight is always 20/20. We can take a look at the past and go, well, of course it was going to happen, but did we all know? Nobody really knew. I thought we could avoid it, but here we are. So if you're watching the live stream, welcome. If you're watching the replay, just know that the news is going to take about 10 minutes today. And then we do the Q&A at the end. Timestamps below so you can skip ahead, do whatever you want to, and that should take care of it. So let's take a look at what exactly is going on. So today is, like I said, pretty bad day. But remember, there's tons of bad days out there for the market. There's tons of bad days for everything else. And just remember also that for the awful days that, the market is what it is. It's just a price tag. But it really pales a comparison to the suffering and everything that's going on in Ukraine. So keep everything in perspective as best you can. And again, try to control your sphere. So everything took a big dump last night because of this invasion. Everything's down mightily, which we knew it would happen if this happened. I mean, we're seeing some pretty awful prices, and I wouldn't be surprised if it falls even more. It just depends. Right now it is it's 9 a.m. here, so the markets don't open for another hour and a half. I would expect when the markets open, we're going to see even more free fall and more panic, because there's always a cycle. People they'll kind of take a step back and go, okay, well, how does this affect everything? And then as things start to shake out, then all of a sudden you see just a massive amount of dumping, because fear begets fear. And when people see it, then they start to get afraid and they kind of go forward. If all the different markets held, I don't think you'd see so much. But again, it is a herd mentality. And when the markets open, I believe you're going to see a lot more dips. I could be wrong, hope I'm wrong. But again, put everything in perspective. So here's what we actually, well, real quick, just so you know, if gold took quite a bit of a jump this whole time. So we'll see how that works out. Anyhow, this is what we know. This is where we're at. So Ukraine conflict, what we know about the invasion. So real quick, this was just updated about an hour ago from BBC. So first off, Putin orders the attack. There was a little bit of a back and forth, but this is exactly what happened. Let me pull this up so you can see it. So in a televised speech at 5:55 Moscow time or 2:55 GMT, Putin announced a military operation in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region. Part of it has been occupied and run by Russian-backed rebels since 2014. Putin said Russia was intervening as an act of self-defiance or self-defense. Russia did not want to occupy Ukraine, but would demilitarize and denazify the country. This is very dangerous talk for these types of things. And it is concerning. And the question really becomes, does it stop here at Ukraine, or do things keep moving forward? I'm not a geopolitical analyst nor do I claim to be or think I have a crystal ball. But when I see or hear about talk such as denazify, it raises up extreme red flags. So here's what else to know. Explosions were heard across the country. BBC correspondents heard loud bangs in the capital, Kiev, as well as Kramatorsk in the Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine. Blasts have also been heard in the southern port city of Odessa. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky said Russia had carried out missile strikes in Ukraine's infrastructure and on border guards. Russia's defense ministry has denied attacking Ukrainian cities, saying it was targeting only military infrastructure, air defense, and air force with high precision weapons. I will just tell you that going through any types of war, there's always collateral damage, unfortunately. And that is just the truth. So even as high as you say or don't say, or are telling the truth or not telling the truth, because you can't really take anybody for their word these days, it seems like, especially from different countries. So even if they're trying to do a precise attack, it's you will still have loss of life, and that is just the truth. Tanks and troops enter Ukraine. Tanks and troops have poured into Ukraine at points along its eastern, southern, northern borders, Ukraine says. Also, convoys have also entered the eastern Luhansk and Kharkiv regions and moved in the Kherson regions from Crimea, a territory that Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014, which is why I don't think this is going to stop. It's going to start here in Ukraine. Putin will try to go forward. But again, I could be wrong. Not a geopolitical analyst, but it is, again, concerning just how fast this actually went forward. There are deaths. At least 8 people have died in bombings by Russian forces. An attack on a military unit in Podolsk outside Odessa killed 6 people, wounded 7. Ukraine does say it's fighting back. Ukrainian armed forces say they have shot down 5 Russian planes and a helicopter. Ukraine has also declared martial law, which means the military takes control temporarily and has cut diplomatic ties with Russia as there's different sanctions being enforced by EU and America. Residents seek shelter. In Kiev, there are huge jams on expressways as people flee the city. Many people in Kiev have sought shelter in underground metro stations. There are also long queues at petrol stations and cash machines, this is exactly what war looks like. And it doesn't matter. This is what people in power do. They bring forth their agenda and their ideas of who should be in control and what should be in control. But in the end, wars damage these people. And I want you to take a real good look at this. This is what the tolls of wars are. And this is just the beginning. So I've served in the military during wartime. I've seen war. I know where it goes. And it never stops. Because as long as there are people in power who will want to amass more power, it will always be the same. People were out in the streets last night in the city. They were waving the Ukrainian flag. They said this was their land. They're going nowhere, she reported, which is admirable, honestly. Now, here's how it affects everything else. Now, not just loss of life. Of course, it's going to affect other people throughout the entire globe. We are really a global community, especially as these things start to happen. Oil prices jump above $100 for the first time in 7 years. Meanwhile, Russia's currency, the ruble, fell to an all-time low against the dollar. London Stock Exchange leading FTSE 100 plunged more than 2.7% or 200 points within minutes of opening. Again, I expect the same thing to happen in our markets, traditional finance, S&P 500, NASDAQ, and all those things probably take a big, huge hit today. Here's the positives, or however you want to look at it. World condemns Putin. U.S. President Joe Biden says Putin chose a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. True. The world would hold Russia accountable. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was appalled by the horrific events in Ukraine and that Putin has chosen a path of bloodshed and destruction by launching this unprovoked attack. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg condemns Russia's reckless attack. Europe was facing its darkest hours. And then former U.S. President Donald Trump says Mr. Putin took advantage of America's weakness. And I think he wanted to do something and negotiate. It got worse and worse. And then he saw the weakness, Trump said. So that's what's going on. So that's what we have. And that is everything in a nutshell for what we know right now. Again, wars seldom end without an escalation of conflict. Again, I'm not the expert on war, but I can just tell you that war begets more war, violence begets more violence, and then the turbulence and the ambiguity and the uncertainty will surely only escalate. Now, if you remember back in for the first Iraq war, that was a pretty quick war, pretty decisive. But then the problems actually happen after the war. You can see that in the Iraq war. You can see that in the Afghanistan war for the United States. Also talk to Russia about invading Afghanistan and see how well that worked out. But again, it's a little bit different when you're bordering these countries. But the real question is, well, what else? I mean, we can take a look at Twitter results. And I'm going to go over this really fast because I can't scroll down on Twitter to show you these things because there's some pretty graphic videos, which I will not show. But you can see, like here, there's Russian fighter jets flying in. Here, of course, we see Putin, and he's trying to negotiate. I don't think he really wanted to. And that is what's happening. However, there was one positive thing, if you can call it that. At least over on Squawk Box, they talked about how, the Fed wants to raise basis points. A couple of economists had said, well, that's off the table now because, the different things that are going on, which is going to put pretty much the world economy into a free fall for quite some time. And so maybe the Fed will actually pull back. But that's just, again, if you put in focus, these are just numbers. These are just dollars, not human life. And that, I think, is the big thing. So right now, I think everybody is feeling pretty much deflated. And we talk about these things as if they don't exist, but they do exist. But now it's really time to focus. And I'm going to talk to you about real quick is we can focus on the wars and we can talk about the wars all day long, and you can watch and you can ingest a massive amounts of news about what's going on, and you can pull yourself down the hole. But you really want to think about, because if you've been around for a while, wars are nothing new since the beginning of time. So you can look at this and go, this is awful, which it is, and you can be sucked down, you can do all those things, or you can take a look, and this is just the truth, about what you can control. Take a look at the things you can control, understand what those things are, and then understand the things that you cannot control, and hopefully have the wisdom to know the difference between the two. So right now, what can you do here as if you're in, I don't know where you're at, actually. If you're in the United States, if you're in EU, if you're in Australia, if you're in wherever you're, Canada, what can you do for this particular situation as far as the war itself? There's really not much that you potentially or particularly can do. Now, if things break out and there's an even greater war between nations, then that is, well, you can think about that as time goes on. But right now, you got to think about what can I do and how can I control the things that are in my circle right now. And taking a look at all these news and just worrying only begets more worrying. So what can you do as far as economically for your family? That's up. For me, when I take a look at these things, I can't do anything in Ukraine. I'm not in the military anymore. However, if things do happen, there's no lack of medical personnel that they'll need. So that's just how it is for me. But the question is, what can you do economically for yourself? What can you do? Ukraine, not too much. Can you continue to dollar cost average? Can you continue to buy? Can you sell off all your crypto and digital assets? You can do all those things. But it really depends and comes down to what can you do and what can you control, and take a look at the things you can't control. And again, try to know the difference between the two and work out from there. And that's what we have right now. For me personally, I can only tell you what I'm doing for right now. So I report on the news. I take a look at what's going on. I say prayers for the people in Ukraine because it's just an awful, all wars are awful. And it's always started by people in power, not the individual citizens and people in there, unless they're protecting themselves. So for me, what I'm doing is the same thing I've done every single day, which is I wake up, I look at the positivity, the potential hope that's out there as far as coming up, because hopefully it won't last forever. The buy orders from Voyager trigger, and I buy the same things every day: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Chainlink, Cardano, Gala, Algorand, some other things actually I've added on. I'll probably be adding on more because I can't change anything else. And I can just keep doing the things that I do and control those things around me. And that's what we have. So That's it for today's video. It was short and sweet. I just wanted to get that out there and just tell you that there's a lot of things to worry about, a lot of things to be concerned about, but you need to focus on you and your family and what you can actually control. And now that's it. So if you like today's video, thumbs up, thumbs down, give it a thumbs down, tell me why, and consider subscribing, all that good stuff. But let's get into the questions. 5, we'll probably go a little bit longer for a Q&A, and we'll go from there. So let me bring this up. Yeah, like I'm down because if you lived through war and gone through war, like I was, medic in 91 Charlie, which was a LVN or nurse in the military. I mean, take care of people who come back from war. It's just a shitty situation because, like I said, there's always tragedy and suffering and different things that go about. And again, it's always down to the individual people that are in power that bring this about because of whatever their delusions of grandeur are. And I'm not going to say why it is or what it is, but that's beyond me. I just know that in the grand scheme of things, war really doesn't help out. Only that helps out the people in power. And that's it. Talk about synthetics. What are your thoughts on synthetics? Synthetics we were talking about this last night at the meetup, actually, which is a great meetup we had here in Puerto Rico. Shout out to the Smokehouse for doing that. And someone asked me about synthetics. They go, what do you think about synthetics? I go, it's not doing anything. And there's 2 ways to look at it. Like me, synthetics could be a big thing, but I don't really have much faith in the project itself. And there's probably some good people around it in the tokenomics. But for me, I just don't think that's going to do so well. So I'm going to, I sold part of it a while back. I still own a little bit because I think maybe it takes off, but I sold a little. And I just don't, because I've had like over 60 different cryptos throughout the different my time frame. And now I'm just trying to get into the other stuff. So me personally, I'd sell, but if it's up to you, you can keep on to it. I don't know. Robbie, think the Baltic states are in danger. Everything's in danger. I mean, look, when you start this out, it just kind of gets the ball rolling, and before you know it, it kind of can escalate. So it really will go down to how far this wants to go, and this really goes down to, what was the ulterior motive for this? How much power do you get, and what is the big play, and why does Putin want Ukraine so heavily when he's going to face some pretty massive sanctions? We'll see. Rob, do you still use Trailer Chain? No. I use Santiment. I like Santiment because it gives me not only sentiment analysis, but on-chain data. And I can also take a look at developer activity. So I like that one. Yeah. Media cry wolf for 2 years. No one believed them when it was real. And this is one of those things like, again, like yesterday, we talked about this. We go, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. So you can sell everything and get out, or you can stay in. Actually, we talked about this a week ago. And of course, yesterday the markets went up. Everything's looking pretty good. And today everything drops down. I'm not one of those people to say, okay, this is definitely going to happen, so I'm going to sell everything. I didn't see. I mean, we could, again, retrospectively, in hindsight, like, oh, of course it would happen, right? But didn't know. Now, the big question is, how long will this last? And how much will the markets be affected? That's the big thing. In the long run, 3, 4, 5 years, will we look back at this and go, oh, this is what took Bitcoin to zero? That's what you have to ask yourself. I don't think so. Do you think, this is a good question, do you think Russia's stance in crypto will turn our market into a target from the West? It would have if if Russia was the only country that thought that crypto was going to be great and be a big disruptor and changing and actually try to integrate it into their countries. But a lot of countries do the same thing, especially America. So America, if you don't know, we have one of the largest amounts of Bitcoin miners after China shut things down. And we've got a lot of different institutions and big players coming in the game that actually think that crypto is going to do well. So I think it's going to be all right. If Russia was the only country, probably a problem. But right now, I think it's most of the countries do. Even China wants to do their CBDCs. Johnny, Putin is not the bad guy here. Ukraine is. We'll see how it works out. If rates go up, don't inflation go up? Inflation could go up even more, especially if the Fed says, "Hey, we're not going to raise rates." So, yeah, it will go up. But the question is, they're stuck. The Fed's stuck because they had those half basis points, and they're like, well, maybe 0.25, maybe half bips. That wasn't going to really move the needle too much anyhow. Now they take it off the table. They're like, well, it wasn't going to do much anyhow. Remember in 1982 or in the 1980s when Volcker was the head of the Fed Reserve, they were raising rates to 7, 8, 9%. And they said, we need to do this or else we're going to face a recession. They did that. Recession still came, but it was very short-lived. So is what it is. And then let's the last one. Thank you, Solomon. Love from India, Rob. Appreciate your honest inputs. As a veteran, how long do you think this war goes on? Thanks for your service. So for this one, it's a little bit different because, again, this isn't a country which is trying to occupy from across the world. This is Russia going into Ukraine, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought Ukraine was part of Russia at some point. I know Crimea was, and then it got annexed and they got pulled back. So it's a little bit different. So could this be a long-standing war? I don't think so with the military might that Russia has, and I could be wrong because I mean, who knows how mighty Russia is right now? Of course, Putin's going to say it's the greatest thing ever, but how powerful are they, and how fast can this sweep across? Not sure, but it could be long, it could be bloody, and if it is, that's not good news for Russia and for a lot of us. So that's it. All right, so that's it for today. Just want to put that out real quick. Like today's video, thumbs up. If you don't, give a thumbs down and tell me why, and consider subscribing. Also, timestamps, all that good stuff. That's it for today. Thanks so much. See you on the next one.